They threw Pepsi on the waitress for fun, cameras rolling as she stood there trembling, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. Just another nobody they could humiliate for entertainment. What they didn't know, her husband was Lucky Bonanno, and he'd just stopped playing nice. If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. Angela Herman had been on her feet for 7 hours straight. The Versailles Palace Hotel's grand ballroom glittered under cascading crystal chandeliers as Manhattan's elite raised champagne flutes and laughed with the confidence of people who'd never known consequences. Angela moved between tables like a shadow, refilling glasses, clearing plates, invisible to the guests whose vacation homes cost more than she'd earn in 3 lifetimes. She didn't mind being invisible. In fact, she preferred it. "More champagne, table 9?" her manager hissed, snapping his fingers without looking at her. Angela nodded, steadying her silver tray as she navigated through designer gowns and custom-tailored suits. Table 9 was trouble. She'd known it since they arrived. 3 men in their late 20s, drunk since the cocktail hour, celebrating something they kept calling the Tribeca deal. Their laughter had that sharp edge to it, the kind that came from people who'd never been told no. The one in the center had a name tag that read, Darren Kemp in embossed gold letters. Blonde, smirking, wearing a watch that could have paid her rent for a year. "Finally," Darren drawled as Angela approached, his words slurring slightly. "Thought we'd die of thirst over here." "My apologies, sir." Angela kept her voice neutral. Professional. She'd learned long ago that reacting only made things worse. As she poured, Darren grabbed his friend's phone, scrolling through photos that made them all snicker. Angela caught a glimpse selfies of them making ridiculous faces, posing with bottles, rich boys playing at being dangerous. "Angela, right?" Darren squinted at her name tag, leaning too close. She could smell the bourbon on his breath. "Pretty name. You got a boyfriend, Angela?" "I'm married, sir." "Married?" His friends erupted in exaggerated gasps and theatrical groans. "Damn. Lucky guy. What's he do? Let me guess, drives a truck? Works construction?" Angela's jaw tightened. Something like that. This sent them into hysterics. Classic. Bet he's got a beer gut and a Yankees cap, right? She said nothing. The champagne bottle was empty. She should leave. Wait. Darren stood up, swaying slightly. The room was loud enough that most people didn't notice, but Angela noticed. She saw his friend raising his phone. She saw the look in Darren's eyes, the look of someone about to do something for the story. "I got a question." Darren's voice got louder. A few nearby tables glanced over. "When you go home tonight, you gonna tell your husband about us? About how you spend your nights serving people like me?" "Darren, man, sit down," one of his friends muttered, but he was grinning, phone camera already recording. "I'm just curious," Darren continued, gesturing broadly at the opulent ballroom. "Does it bother you, seeing all this, knowing you'll never have it?" Angela's pulse pounded in her ears. "Have a wonderful evening, gentlemen." She turned to leave. "Hey, I'm talking to you." What happened next took 3 seconds, but Angela would remember it in frame-by-frame clarity for the rest of her life. Darren grabbed a bottle of Pepsi from the table, one of the mixers they'd ordered and ignored. He took 2 steps forward. Then, while his friends howled with laughter and phones captured every moment, he tilted the bottle and poured the entire contents over Angela's head. The soda was shockingly cold. It cascaded down her face, her neck, soaking through her crisp white uniform blouse. Her carefully pinned hair came loose. Droplets hit the marble floor with soft splashes that seemed deafening in her ears. The nearby tables went silent. Women gasped. Men stared. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Angela stood frozen, Pepsi dripping from her eyelashes, running down her trembling chin. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The humiliation was physical, a crushing weight on her chest that made the glittering room spin and blur. Darren's friends were dying laughing, slapping the table. "Dude, did you get that? This is going viral. What is going on here?" The manager appeared, his face flushed, eyes darting between Angela and table 9. He took one look at Darren's smirking face, at the Kemp family name tag, and his expression changed. Fear. "She was rude to our guests," Darren said casually, dropping back into his seat. "Just teaching some manners." The manager grabbed Angela's arm hard enough to bruise. "I am so sorry, Mr. Kemp." Deeply sorry. Angela, break room. Now. But I didn't. Now. Angela stumbled away, past the staring faces, past the whispers, her shoes squelched with each step. Someone's date covered her mouth, eyes wide with secondhand horror. An older woman looked away, uncomfortable but silent. No one said anything. No one helped. In the staff restroom, Angela locked the door and stared at her reflection. Dark soda matted her hair to her scalp. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in black rivers. The blouse she'd ironed so carefully that morning was destroyed. She didn't cry. She'd learned years ago that crying changed nothing. Her phone buzzed. A text from her husband. Asterisk asterisk. How's work? Amor? Asterisk asterisk. Angela stared at the message. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could tell him everything. But then what? People like the Kemps didn't face consequences. Better to stay quiet. Better to survive. She typed back. Asterisk. Fine. Home by midnight. Love you. Asterisk. She buried the soda-soaked blouse in a trash bag, changed into her backup uniform, and returned to her shift with her head down. What Angela didn't know was that Nico, the dishwasher who'd always been kind to her, had watched everything from the service entrance. Nico, who knew exactly who Angela was married to. By dawn, a 23-second video would be sitting on Lucky Bonanno's encrypted phone, the man who controlled every cement truck, every union vote, every construction permit in New York City. The man whose wife had just been humiliated in front of Manhattan's wealthiest. That night, as Angela rode the subway home with damp hair and a forced smile, she had no idea that in less than 7 days, the Kemp family would learn a lesson they'd never forget. You don't humiliate a queen just because she's wearing an apron. They laughed at a woman's humiliation, and somewhere across the city, her husband stopped laughing forever. Before you scroll, subscribe, because what comes next isn't mercy, it's justice. Rico Falcone had worked for Lucky Bonanno for 16 years. In that time, he'd delivered plenty of bad news. Arrests, betrayals, deals gone sideways, shipments intercepted. He'd learned to keep his face neutral, his voice steady, his hands relaxed even when his heart was racing. But this morning, driving through pre-dawn Brooklyn with his phone burning a hole in his pocket, his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. The video had arrived at 5:52 a.m. Unknown number. No message. Just a file attachment with a timestamp from the night before. Rico almost deleted it, probably spam, maybe a setup. Then he saw the file name, asterisk Versailles, Angela, H, MP, 4, asterisk. His stomach dropped. He pressed play. 23 seconds that made his blood go cold. The shaky phone camera, the laughter, the golden chandelier light catching on dark liquid as it poured over Angela's head. Her face gawed, her face frozen in shock and humiliation, while entitled voices cackled in the background. The way she just stood there, trembling, mascara running, while nobody helped. Rico watched it twice. The second time, he noticed the name tag on the blonde asshole's suit. Darren Kemp. Murda, he whispered, pulling over to the side of the road. His hands were shaking now. Not from fear, from rage. Angela Bonanno was the kindest person Rico had ever met. She remembered his daughter's birthday. She made him espresso the way his grandmother used to. She treated everyone with dignity, from CEOs to dishwashers, because that's who she was, and some trust fund prick had turned her into entertainment. Rico forwarded the video to his encrypted phone, deleted it from the original message, and traced the sender. It took him 4 minutes to confirm. Nico Castellano, kitchen staff at Versailles, cousin of Tommy Castellano from the Bronx crew. Good kid, loyal. Smart enough to know this needed to reach Lucky directly. By 6:20, Rico was pulling up to Lucky's brownstone in Red Hook, the one that didn't appear on any property records, the one with flower boxes in the windows and Angela's herb garden thriving in the backyard. The morning was still dark, but he could see lights coming on in the kitchen. Rico sat in the car for a moment, engine idling, watching Lucky's silhouette move past the window. He'd seen Lucky angry before. Seen him coldly dismantle rivals who'd broken agreements. Seen him make decisions that changed the power structure of the city overnight. Lucky was surgical when provoked, precise, patient, devastating. But Rico had never seen Lucky angry about times her asterisk. Angela was the line. The only line. Everyone in their world knew it. Rico killed the engine and walked up the steps. His finger hesitated over the doorbell. Once he pressed it, once Lucky saw that video, there was no going back. The Kemp family would be marked. Their empire would crumble. It wouldn't be loud. Lucky never was, but it would be absolute. He pressed the bell. Footsteps inside. The door opened. Lucky Bonanno stood there in a white t-shirt and dark slacks, newspaper tucked under one arm, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked like any other husband getting ready for work. Trim, composed, silver just starting to thread through his dark hair. Only his eyes gave him away. Sharp, assessing. The kind of eyes that saw everything and forgot nothing. Rico. Lucky's voice was calm, but his eyebrows drew together. It's early. I know. We need to talk. Lucky's expression didn't change, but he stepped aside. Angela's still sleeping. Kitchen. They moved through the quiet house. Family photos lined the hallway, Angela laughing at their wedding, the two of them on a beach somewhere. Her grandmother's old portrait. The coffee maker was already brewing, filling the kitchen with warmth. Lucky poured 2 cups, slid one across the counter to Rico, and waited. Rico pulled out his phone. This came in an hour ago. From Nico at Versailles. He thought you should see it. He placed the phone on the counter, screen facing Lucky, and pressed play. Lucky watched without moving. His face remained perfectly still, no flinch, no gasp, nothing. But Rico saw it. The way Lucky's jaw tightened incrementally with each second, the way his fingers pressed harder against the countertop, the way his breathing slowed, became controlled, deliberate. When the video ended, Lucky played it again. Then a third time. The silence in the kitchen was suffocating. Outside, a car passed. A dog barked somewhere down the block. Normal morning sounds in a normal neighborhood. Lucky set the phone down gently. He removed his reading glasses, folded them with precision, and placed them beside his untouched coffee. When? His voice was barely above a whisper. Last night, around 9. She came home after midnight. Lucky's eyes were distant, replaying the memory. I asked how work was. She said fine. She smiled at me. Rico. She kissed me goodnight and said she was just tired. Rico said nothing. There was nothing to say. Lucky picked up his coffee cup, then set it down without drinking. His hand was steady. That scared Rico more than rage would have. The blonde one. The one pouring. Lucky's voice was eerily calm. Who is he? Darren Kemp. Son of Victor Kemp. Kemp & Son Developers. Commercial real estate. Luxury properties. They've got projects across Manhattan. I know who Victor Kemp is. Lucky's eyes finally met Rico's, and what Rico saw there made his spine straighten. He's got 3 major developments breaking ground this quarter. The Tribeca Towers, the Hudson Yards expansion, the meatpacking renovation. That's right. And all 3 require permits we facilitate. Cement from our suppliers, steel from our contractors, union labor we negotiate. Rico nodded slowly. Victor Kemp's empire sits on foundations we built. Not anymore. Lucky's voice was soft, almost gentle. Call the crew, everyone. I want files on every Kemp property, every contract, every business partner, every bank loan. I want to know who they owe, who owes them, and where every dollar flows. Boss. They made a show out of my wife, Rico. Lucky turned to look out the window at the brightening sky. They laughed at her. They filmed it for entertainment. They made her feel small. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. So now I'm going to show them what small really feels like. Rico felt a chill run down his spine. What do you need me to do? Lucky finally lifted his coffee, took one sip, and set it down with finality. Find everything. Then we start pulling threads. Quietly, one by one, until the whole empire unravels. He glanced toward the stairs, where Angela was still sleeping, unaware. Enrico? She never finds out. Whatever we do, she doesn't carry this. Understood? Understood. Lucky picked up his phone, deleted the video, and handed it back. Tell Nico he did the right thing, and tell him to keep his mouth shut. As Rico left, he glanced back once. Lucky stood at the window, hands in his pockets, watching the sunrise. He looked calm, patient, like a man preparing for war. Some men raise their voices. Others raise empires, then crush yours quietly. If you'd stand with the man who protects what he loves, hit subscribe now, and don't miss how Lucky Bonanno rewrites revenge. Victor Kemp's office occupied the entire 42nd floor of the Kemp Tower in Midtown Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a conquest. Central Park sprawling to the north, the Hudson glittering to the west. Everything Victor saw, he either owned or planned to own. At 63, Victor had built an empire through calculated ruthlessness disguised as charm. Silver hair perfectly styled, Tom Ford suit tailored to precision. A handshake that conveyed both warmth and warning. He'd survived 3 recessions, 4 mayoral administrations, and countless competitors who'd underestimated him. This morning, sipping his 3rd espresso while reviewing blueprints for the Hudson Yards expansion, Victor felt invincible. His phone buzzed. Gerard, his project manager for the Tribeca Towers. "Morning, Gerard. Tell me we're ahead of schedule." There was a pause. Too long. "Mr. Kemp, we have a situation." Victor's smile faded. "What kind of situation?" "The cement delivery for Tower 2. It didn't arrive this morning. I called the supplier Bronx Materials and they said there's been a delay. Technical issues with their trucks." "Technical issues." Victor's voice cooled. "Did you explain that we have a contractual deadline?" "I did. They apologized but said their entire fleet is down for maintenance. Recommended we contact an alternative supplier." Victor set down his espresso. "Their entire fleet, all at once." "That's what they said." "Call Romano Brothers. They've handled overflow before." "I did. They're booked solid for the next 3 weeks. Same with Empire Concrete and Hudson Supply. It's like everyone's suddenly unavailable." A thin thread of unease wound through Victor's chest. "That's not possible. There are 24 concrete suppliers in this city. I've called 11 so far. Same story from all of them: booked, delayed, or undergoing maintenance." Victor stood, walking to the window. 42 stories below, the city moved in organized chaos. Trucks, cranes, construction sites dotting the landscape like his personal monuments. "Keep calling. Offer premium rates if you have to. We can't afford delays on Tribeca." "Yes, sir." Victor hung up and immediately dialed his son. Darren answered on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep. "Dad? It's not even 8. Where were you last night?" Celebration dinner at Versailles. The Tribeca deal closed, remember? You said to take the team out. How much did you drink?" Darren laughed. "Not enough to forget the night." "Why? What's wrong?" Victor almost asked about the incident he'd seen trending briefly on social media before his PR team scrubbed at something about a waitress in a video. But Darren's childish pranks were the least of his concerns right now. "Nothing. Get to the office by 10. We have meetings." He hung up before Darren could respond. By noon, Victor's unease had metastasized into genuine concern. The concrete delays had spread. Tower 3's steel shipment was stalled at the port longshoremen, citing union disputes. The meatpacking renovation had lost 2 subcontractors overnight, both claiming scheduling conflicts despite signed agreements. Permits that should have been rubber-stamped were suddenly under review. Victor called an emergency meeting with his executive team. "Talk to me," he said, loosening his tie as 6 anxious faces stared back from the conference table. "What the hell is happening?" Marcus, his CFO, cleared his throat. "It appears we're experiencing coordinated delays across multiple projects. I've reached out to our contacts at City Hall, but they're being unusually vague." "Vague how?" "They're not returning calls. The ones who do answer claim they're waiting on approvals from departments that have already approved us. It's circular, deliberate." Victor's jaw tightened. "Someone's putting pressure on them. That's my assessment." "Who?" Victor leaned forward. "Who has that kind of reach?" Silence. Then Patricia, his head of operations, spoke quietly. "I looked into our supplier contracts. Most of them route through intermediary holding companies. Shell corporations that facilitate permits, union negotiations, material sourcing. I know how our business works, Patricia." One name keeps appearing in the background. Different companies, but the same registered agent, El Bonanno Holdings. The name meant nothing to Victor. "Who are they?" Patricia exchanged glances with Marcus. "That's the thing, sir. They're ghosts. No public filings, no website, no press. But they're embedded in every major construction contract in this city. Trucking, unions, materials, it all touches them somehow." Victor pulled out his phone, typing the name into a search engine. A handful of references appeared: business registrations, permit applications, nothing substantial, like smoke. "Get me everything on Bonanno Holdings. Corporate structure, ownership, contacts. I want to know who's behind it by end of day." As the team filed out, Victor remained at the window, staring at his city. 30 years he'd played this game. He knew when someone was sending a message. The question was, what had he done to deserve it? His phone rang. An unknown number. "Victor Kemp." "Mr. Kemp." The voice was male, calm, with a Brooklyn accent that spoke of old neighborhoods and older rules. "You don't know me, but I know you. Your Tribeca Towers? Beautiful project. Would be a shame if they never got finished." Victor's blood went cold. "Who is this?" "Someone you've been doing business with for years without knowing it. We've been very good partners, Victor. We facilitate. We smooth things over. We make your world work. What do you want?" "Nothing you haven't already taken. But here's some advice. When you build an empire, check the foundation. Sometimes you'll find it belongs to someone else." The line went dead. Victor stood frozen, phone pressed to his ear, listening to silence. His reflection stared back from the window, a powerful man in an expensive suit, suddenly aware of how high up he was, and how far he could fall. That evening, as Victor reviewed files late into the night, he found it buried in a contract from 8 years ago. A permit facilitation agreement for one of his first major developments. The signature at the bottom, barely legible, *L, Bonanno, *. The man he'd been paying, the man whose infrastructure he'd been using, the man he'd never bothered to research because the money flowed smoothly and the projects got built. Victor pulled up the trending video his PR team had shown him that morning, the one of his son pouring Pepsi on a waitress at Versailles. He read the caption, *, Darren Kemp humiliates Angela Herman, waitress at Versailles Palace Hotel, *. Angela Herman. With trembling hands, Victor searched the name alongside Bonanno. The results made his stomach drop. Angela Herman Bonanno, married 2019 to Luciano Lucky Bonanno. Victor sat back in his chair, the city lights blurring before him. His son hadn't just humiliated some random waitress. He'd humiliated the wife of the man who controlled the invisible machinery that kept New York running. The man Victor had been unknowingly dependent on for nearly a decade. "Oh God," Victor whispered into the empty office. "What have we done?" Angela woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom curtains and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. For a moment, wrapped in warm blankets with Lucky's side of the bed still indented from where he'd slept, everything felt normal. Then she moved, and her neck ached. Her scalp felt tender. The memory rushed back, cold soda, laughter, the weight of humiliation crushing her chest. She closed her eyes and pulled the blanket over her head. "Amore?" Lucky's voice carried from the kitchen. "You awake?" Angela forced herself to sit up, pushing hair from her face. In the mirror across the room, she looked exhausted. The shower last night had taken 3 washes to get all the stickiness out. She'd stood under the water until it ran cold, scrubbing her skin raw, trying to wash away the feeling of being small. "Coming," she called back, her voice steadier than she felt. Downstairs, Lucky had made breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit arranged on her favorite plate. He stood at the stove in jeans and a dark Henley, looking domestic and handsome and safe. When he turned and smiled at her, Angela felt something crack inside her chest. "Morning, beautiful." He kissed her forehead, holding her close for just a moment longer than usual. "Coffee's ready." "You're spoiling me." Angela slid into her chair, grateful he couldn't see her face. "You work too hard. Someone has to take care of you." Lucky set the plate in front of her and sat across the table, his own breakfast untouched. He just watched her with those dark, perceptive eyes that always saw too much. Angela ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The silence felt heavy. "How was work really?" Lucky asked quietly. Her hand froze halfway to her mouth. "What?" "Last night. You seemed tired. More than usual." "It was busy. Holiday season. Everyone wants to celebrate." The lie tasted bitter. Angela reached for her coffee, avoiding his gaze. "Nothing I can't handle." Lucky nodded slowly, but something in his expression made her think he didn't quite believe her. Before he could press further, her phone buzzed on the table. A text from Maria, one of the other waitresses. *Angela, are you okay? Everyone's talking about what happened. That video is everywhere. Angela's stomach dropped. Her fingers trembled as she opened her social media apps. She'd avoided them since last night, but now, the video was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, reposted, commented on, shared thousands of times. *number, Pepsi waitress times was trending. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire's son humiliates service worker," and viral video shows elite cruelty. Angela watched herself on the small screen, frozen, dripping, trembling while laughter echoed around her. The comments were a mix of outrage and support. Strangers dissecting the worst moment of her life like entertainment. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. "Angela?" Lucky was standing now, concern etched across his face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Her voice broke. She pressed her palm against her mouth, trying to hold back the sob building in her throat. Lucky was beside her in an instant, taking the phone gently from her hands. She couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see his face when he realized what had happened, what she'd been too ashamed to tell him. She heard the video play, heard the laughter, heard Darren Kemp's voice, just teaching some manners. The silence that followed was devastating. "Angela." Lucky's voice was very soft, very careful. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Look at me." She couldn't. Tears were streaming down her face now, all the emotion she'd been holding back since last night breaking through like a dam bursting. "Look at me, Amor." She finally met his eyes. There was no pity there, no anger, just infinite tenderness and something else. Something cold and deadly lurking beneath the surface that vanished the moment she focused on him. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked gently. "Because," Angela's voice cracked. "Because what could you do? They're the Kemps. They own half of Manhattan. If I make trouble, I lose my job. If you make trouble, we both look crazy. People like us don't win against people like them, Lucky. We just survive." Lucky's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his touch remained gentle as he wiped tears from her cheeks. "You're not people like us, Angela. You're my wife, and nobody treats you like that." "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." He pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried against his shoulder. His hand stroked her hair with infinite patience. "You are the most important thing in my world. Do you understand that?" Angela nodded against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent, coffee and cedar and safety. "I want you to take the week off," Lucky said quietly. "Call in. Tell them you're sick. You don't go back to that place." "Lucky, I can't afford." "I'll handle it. Please, just stay home. Rest. Let this blow over." Angela pulled back to look at him. "You promise you won't do anything stupid?" Lucky smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Me? I'm just a mechanic, remember? What could I possibly do?" He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, gentle kisses that felt like promises. "Let me make you more coffee," he said, standing and moving back to the kitchen. "And then we're spending the day together. No work, no phones, just us." Angela watched him move around their kitchen. This man who loved her so completely, who made her feel safe even when the world was cruel. She had no idea that while she'd been sleeping, Lucky had already set in motion a plan that would dismantle the Kemp empire brick by brick. She had no idea that by tomorrow, every construction project bearing the Kemp name would grind to a halt. She had no idea that her husband wasn't a mechanic at all. And perhaps that was mercy. Because sometimes, love means protecting someone from the truth, even when that truth is your own capacity for calculated destruction. Lucky poured her coffee with steady hands, his face calm and loving. Inside, he was already at war. You ever notice how the loudest people fall the hardest? The ones who stay quiet, they're the ones you should fear. Subscribe now before the storm breaks, because Lucky Bonanno is just getting started. Victor Kemp hadn't slept. The sunrise found him still in his office, surrounded by contracts, financial statements, and a growing sense of dread that felt like ice water in his veins. His assistant, Jennifer, arrived at 7:30 to find him disheveled, tie loose, sleeves rolled up, hair unkempt. In 20 years, she'd never seen him look anything less than impeccable. "Mr. Kemp? Sir, are you all right? Cancel everything today." Victor's voice was hoarse. "And get me Thomas Reed on the phone. Now." Thomas Reed was Victor's lawyer, the kind who charged $1,000 an hour and earned every penny. He arrived within 40 minutes, leather briefcase in hand, concern evident despite his professional composure. "Victor, what's the emergency?" Victor slid a folder across his desk. "Tell me everything you know about El Bonanno Holdings." Thomas's expression shifted just slightly, but Victor caught it. "Recognition. And something else. Caution. Why are you asking about Bonanno?" "Because apparently I've been in business with them for 8 years without knowing who they actually are. Because my projects are being systematically dismantled. Because," Victor's voice dropped, "because my idiot son humiliated this man's wife, and now I think we're being punished for it." Thomas sat down slowly. He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "Luciano Bonanno is not someone you want as an enemy, Victor. Tell me something I haven't figured out." He's third-generation Brooklyn. His grandfather ran numbers during Prohibition. His father controlled the Longshoremen's Union for 30 years. Lucky, that's what people call him. He's smarter than both of them combined. He doesn't deal drugs, doesn't run guns, doesn't do anything the FBI can touch. He just facilitates. Facilitates what? Everything. Every cement truck that delivers on time. Every union negotiation that ends favorably. Every permit that gets approved without red tape. Every construction project in this city touches his network somehow, and most people never even know it. Thomas leaned forward. He's the invisible infrastructure, Victor. And you've been paying him for years through shell companies without realizing it. Victor felt sick. How much leverage does he have over us? Thomas pulled out his tablet, fingers moving across the screen. Your Tribeca Towers? The cement supplier is owned by a company that leases trucks from a Bonanno subsidiary. Your steel comes through a port where Bonanno controls the longshoremen. Your permits get approved because Bonanno has relationships with the right people in the right departments. Jesus Christ. The Hudson Yards project? Same thing. The meatpacking renovation? Same thing. Victor, you built your empire on his foundation. And if he decides to pull that foundation out from under you, everything collapses. Everything collapses. Victor's phone buzzed. Gerard, the project manager, again. Victor put him on speaker. Tell me something good, Gerard. I wish I could, sir. Gerard's voice was strained. The inspectors showed up at the Tribeca site this morning, unannounced. They're citing violations, structural concerns, safety issues, zoning discrepancies. None of it makes sense. We passed inspection 3 weeks ago. How long will it delay us? They've issued a stop work order. We're shut down until everything gets re-reviewed. That could take months. Victor closed his eyes. What about Hudson Yards? Same thing. Inspectors there too, like they coordinated it. Because they did, Victor muttered. Keep me updated. He hung up and looked at Thomas. He's destroying us. Methodically, legally. That's his style. No violence, no obvious intimidation. Just pressure applied at every structural weakness until everything crumbles. So, what do I do? Thomas was quiet, his expression grave. You apologize. Publicly. Sincerely. You make restitution. And you pray he's in a forgiving mood. For what? My son poured soda on a waitress. It was stupid, it was cruel. But she's his wife, Victor. Thomas's voice was hard now. In his world, that's everything. You humiliated the woman he loves in front of cameras, made her a viral joke. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? The words hit Victor like a physical blow. He thought of his own wife, Catherine. If someone had done that to her, in front of strangers, for entertainment, he would have burned their world down too. How do I reach him? You don't. He'll reach you when he's ready. As if summoned, Victor's phone rang. Unknown number. His hand trembled as he answered. Victor Kemp. Mr. Kemp. The same calm Brooklyn accent from yesterday. How are your projects going? Victor's throat tightened. What do you want? Want? I don't want anything, Victor. I already have everything. Your cement contracts? Mine. Your union agreements? Mine. Your permits, your inspections, your suppliers, all of it flows through infrastructure I built over 30 years. I'll pay you. Whatever you want. Name your price. This isn't about money. The voice hardened just slightly. This is about respect. Your son thought my wife was nobody. Thought he could humiliate her for fun. Thought there would be no consequences because he's rich and she serves drinks. I'll make him apologize. Oh, you'll do more than that. You'll make this right. Publicly. Completely. Or every project with your name on it will rot in legal limbo until your company is worthless. Please. You have 72 hours to figure out how you're going to fix this. After that, I stop being patient. And Victor? The voice dropped to barely a whisper. You should know I'm a very patient man. So if I'm done waiting, that means you've already lost. The line went dead. Victor sat frozen, phone pressed to his ear, listening to silence. Thomas was watching him with something that looked like pity. What did he say? 72 hours. Victor's voice was hollow. He gave us 72 hours. Then we'd better figure out what an acceptable apology looks like to a man who just dismantled your empire in 3 days. Victor looked out at his city, the skyline punctuated by his buildings, his monuments, his legacy. Except they weren't his at all. They never had been. They belonged to the man who controlled the foundation. And that man was done playing nice. Lucky Bonanno sat in a booth at Sal's Diner in Red Hook. the same booth he'd occupied every Thursday morning for 12 years. To anyone watching, he was just another neighborhood guy: jeans, work boots, leather jacket. He sipped his espresso and read the New York Times like he had nothing more pressing than deciding what to have for lunch. Rico slid into the seat across from him, setting down a manila folder. "Morning, boss." "Morning." Lucky didn't look up from his newspaper. "Talk to me." Kemp's bleeding from every direction. The Tribeca Towers are frozen stop work orders on all 3 buildings. Hudson Yards lost their primary investor this morning. Goldman pulled out, citing concerns about project viability. The meatpacking renovation lost their construction crew. The union rep said they got a better offer elsewhere. Elsewhere meaning? One of our developments. We're paying them 20% more, and they jumped ship within 2 hours of the offer. Lucky turned the page of his newspaper calmly. "Good. What else?" Rico opened the folder. Kemp's credit line got pulled yesterday. His bank claims it's routine portfolio rebalancing, but we both know Danny Marcone made that call. Kemp's scrambling to secure alternative financing, but word's gotten out. Nobody wants to touch him right now, because they don't know why he's falling, and that scares them more than knowing. Exactly. Rico pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. His stock took a nosedive this morning, down 18%. Business journalists are starting to ask questions. His PR team is working overtime. Lucky finally looked up, his dark eyes unreadable. "How's Angela?" The question shift was abrupt, but Rico had learned to follow Lucky's jumps in logic. "She's home. Hasn't left the house since Tuesday. Maria says she called in sick for the rest of the week. Is she eating?" I don't know, boss." "Find out." Lucky's voice was quiet but firm. "And make sure she has groceries. Her favorite things. The good bread from Parisi's. Those pastries she likes from the Italian bakery on Court Street. Have them delivered. Anonymous." Rico made a note. "Done. She can't know any of this comes from me. She thinks I'm just her husband who fixes cars and loves her. That's how it stays." "Understood." Lucky folded his newspaper precisely, setting it aside. His movements were controlled, methodical, the calm before devastation. Phase 2 starts today. I want Kemp's supplier network completely severed. Every contractor, every vendor, every material source. They all get better offers from our people. Make it attractive enough that they can't refuse. That's going to cost us. I don't care what it costs. Lucky's voice remained even, but there was steel beneath it. I want Victor Kemp to wake up every morning and find another piece of his empire missing. I want him to feel powerless. I want him to understand what it's like when the world treats you like you're nothing. Rico nodded, making notes. "What about Darren? The son?" Lucky's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What about him?" "Word is he's still going out, still partying. Doesn't seem to understand the gravity of what's happening. He will." Lucky's voice dropped to something cold and final. "When his father loses everything, when the Kemp name becomes synonymous with failure, when he can't get a table at a restaurant or a meeting with anyone who matters, then he'll understand. But I don't touch him directly. His punishment is watching his father's empire crumble and knowing he caused it." Poetic. "No, just fair." A waitress approached, young, nervous, new. She fumbled with her notepad. "Can I get you gentlemen anything else?" Lucky's entire demeanor shifted. The cold calculation vanished, replaced by warmth. He smiled at her kindly. "Just a refill on the coffee, sweetheart. Take your time. And hey," he gestured to her notepad. "First week?" She nodded, embarrassed. "You're doing great. Keep your head up. It gets easier." The girl smiled, relieved, and hurried away. Rico watched this transformation with quiet awe. This was why people loved Lucky Bonanno. He was ruthless to enemies but gentle to everyone else, especially service workers, especially people society overlooked. "She reminds me of Angela," Lucky said quietly, watching the waitress pour coffee at another table. "Trying so hard, working so hard, just wanting to do her job with dignity. Angela's stronger than she thinks." "I know." Lucky took a sip of his fresh coffee. "That's why she doesn't need to know about any of this. She'd try to stop me. She'd say it's not worth it, that she's fine, that she doesn't want trouble. But it's not about what she thinks she needs. It's about what she deserves." Rico leaned forward. "Boss, Victor Kemp called Thomas Reed yesterday. Reed's asking around, trying to figure out how to make this right. Let him ask. I'm not ready to talk yet. How long are you going to make him sweat?" Lucky checked his watch. 48 more hours. Let him feel what it's like when the walls close in and nobody will help you. When the people you thought were friends suddenly can't take your calls. When money can't fix your problems because the problem is you crossed the wrong man. And then I'll tell him exactly what I want. Publicly. Painfully. And he'll do it because he'll have no other choice. Rico closed the folder. The crew's ready. Everyone's in position. We're hitting 20 different pressure points simultaneously. By tonight, Kemp won't have a single active project in this city. Good. Lucky stood, leaving cash on the table with a generous tip. Make sure the new waitress gets this. Tell her it's from a customer who remembers what it's like starting out. As they walked out into the cold November morning, Rico glanced at his boss. You really love her, don't you, Angela? Lucky stopped, his hand on the car door, looking back at the diner where the young waitress was clearing their table. More than anything in this world, he said quietly. And anyone who hurts her learns that love isn't weakness, Rico. It's the most dangerous thing a man like me can feel. He slid into the car, and they drove away. Behind them, the invisible war continued silent, systematic, unstoppable, and Victor Kemp's empire continued its slow, inevitable collapse. Victor Kemp's office felt smaller than it had 3 days ago. The same floor-to-ceiling windows, the same expensive furniture, the same view of Manhattan, but now it all felt like a cage. His board of directors sat around the conference table, faces ranging from worried to openly hostile. The morning's Wall Street Journal lay in the center. Kemp Empire in freefall. What went wrong? 17 projects, Marcus said, his voice tight. 17 active projects, and every single one is either frozen, delayed, or hemorrhaging money. We've lost 4 major investors. Our stock is down 32%, and nobody will tell me why. I'll tell you why. Victor's voice was hoarse from too little sleep and too much coffee. Because I built this company on borrowed infrastructure, and the man who owns that infrastructure is taking it back. The board exchanged confused glances. Patricia cleared her throat. Sir, I'm not sure I understand. Bonanno. Victor said the name like a curse. Luciano Bonanno. Every supplier we use, every union we negotiate with, every permit we obtain, it all flows through his network. And I never knew it. None of us knew it. Thomas Reed, sitting at the far end of the table, nodded grimly. It's true. I've spent the last 48 hours tracing shell companies and subsidiary relationships. Bonanno's fingerprints are on every major construction deal in this city. He's the invisible hand that makes things work. Or makes them stop working, Marcus muttered. Why is he doing this? Patricia asked. What did we do? And Victor looked at his son. Darren sat slouched in his chair, pale and quiet for once, scrolling through his phone. He'd been unusually subdued since Victor had shown him the video, the one that had gone viral, the one that had destroyed everything. Darren. Victor's voice was sharp. Put the phone down and tell them what you did. Darren's head snapped up. Dad, tell them. The room went silent. Darren's face flushed. There was this waitress, at Versailles. She was being slow, kind of rude, so I poured a drink on her. It was just a joke. Everyone was laughing. A joke. Patricia's voice was ice. You humiliated a woman for entertainment. I didn't know. You didn't know she was married to the most powerful man in New York. Victor finished. You didn't know that the quiet waitress you degraded on camera was Angela Bonanno. And now we're all paying for your joke. The weight of it settled over the room like ash. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. Marcus leaned forward, his face in his hands. We're finished. If Bonanno wants us destroyed, we're finished. No. Victor stood, pacing to the window. We apologize. We make it right. We give him what he wants. And what does he want? Victor pulled out his phone, playing the voicemail he'd received an hour ago. The voice was calm, measured, terrifying in its certainty. Victor, time's almost up. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., Warehouse 47 in Red Hook. Come alone. Bring your son. We'll discuss terms. The message ended. The room stayed silent. He wants us to grovel, Darren said bitterly. He wants justice, Thomas corrected. And honestly, you're lucky he's giving you the option. Men like Bonanno don't have to negotiate. They just destroy. Victor turned to his son, and for the first time, Darren saw something he'd never seen before in his father's eyes. Fear. Do you understand what you've done? Victor's voice shook. Not just to this company, not just to our family, but to every person in this room whose livelihood depends on us. The contractors who won't get paid? The employees who lose their jobs? I didn't mean. You never mean anything, Darren. That's the problem. You go through life thinking your money protects you from consequences. Well, congratulations. You just learned it doesn't. Darren looked away, something that might have been shame finally crossing his features. What do we do? Patricia asked quietly. Victor took a breath, steadying himself. Thomas and I go to that warehouse tomorrow. We meet with Bonanno. We listen to what he wants, and we give it to him, whatever it takes. And if what he wants is impossible, then we lose everything. Victor's voice was hollow. But we're losing everything anyway. At least this way. Maybe we can stop the bleeding. That night, Victor sat alone in his study at home, a glass of scotch untouched on the desk beside him. Catherine, his wife of 30 years, had tried to talk to him, but he'd sent her away. He couldn't explain this to her. Couldn't make her understand how thoroughly he'd failed. He pulled up the video again, the one that had started everything. Watched his son's face, flushed with alcohol and entitlement, as he grabbed that Pepsi bottle. Watched Angela Bonanno standing there frozen, humiliated, while laughter echoed around her. Watched the way she trembled, the way her shoulders hunched, the way she looked so utterly small and alone. And Victor thought about Catherine, about how he'd feel if someone did that to her. He'd burn their world down, just like Lucky Bonanno was doing to him. The scotch burned going down. Victor closed his eyes, and for the first time since building his empire, he let himself feel the full weight of his failure. Not the financial loss that was just money, but the moral failure. The fact that he'd raised a son who thought cruelty was entertainment. The fact that he'd built a company culture where nobody had stepped in to stop it. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. ***, tomorrow, 8 p.m., don't be late. And Victor, bring a pen, you'll be signing things. ***. Victor stared at the message until the screen went dark. He'd spent 40 years building an empire, clawing his way to the top of New York's ruthless real estate world. He'd thought himself untouchable, but he'd forgotten the oldest rule of construction. Before you build anything tall, you'd better know who owns the ground beneath your feet. And Victor Kemp had just discovered that ground had never been his at all. It belonged to Lucky Bonanno, and Lucky was done sharing. Warehouse 47 sat on the edge of Red Hook, overlooking Blackwater and the distant lights of Manhattan. The building was anonymous, weathered brick, no signage, the kind of place that appeared on no tourist maps and in no business directories. Victor Kemp's driver pulled up at 7:55 p.m. Victor sat in the back seat, Thomas Reed beside him, both men silent. In the front passenger seat, Darren stared out the window, his usual bravado replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "Last chance to reconsider," Thomas said quietly. "And go where?" Victor's laugh was bitter. "He owns this city, Thomas. We either face him now, or we spend the rest of our lives watching everything we built turn to dust." The driver, one of Victor's most trusted men, turned around. "Sir, I can't let you go in there alone. Let me come with you." "No." Victor was already opening the door. He said, "Just us. Darren, let's go." Darren climbed out, his expensive jacket doing nothing to protect him from the cold wind coming off the water. Father and son stood side by side, staring at the warehouse entrance where a single light burned above a steel door. "Dad, I'm sorry." Darren's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry." Victor didn't respond. He walked to the door and knocked. It opened immediately. A man stood there, late 50s, built like someone who'd worked with his hands his whole life, wearing a leather jacket and an expression that gave nothing away. "Mr. Kemp, I'm Rico. Come with me." They followed him through the warehouse. It was mostly empty concrete floors, exposed beams, the echo of their footsteps bouncing off bare walls. At the far end, a single table sat under a hanging work light, 2 chairs on one side, 1 chair on the other. In that single chair sat Lucky Bonanno. Victor had expected someone larger, more theatrical. Instead, he saw a man in his early 40s, dark hair with silver threading through it, wearing a simple white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. No jewelry except a wedding ring, no guards visible, though Victor had no doubt they were there. Lucky didn't stand, didn't smile, just watched them approach with eyes that were dark, intelligent, and absolutely merciless. "Sit." Victor and Darren sat. The metal chairs were cold. The light overhead cast harsh shadows. Lucky studied them in silence for a long moment. Then he slid a tablet across the table. "Before we talk, I want you to watch something." He pressed play. It was security footage from Versailles Palace Hotel. Different angle than the viral video, this one showed everything. Showed Darren harassing Angela for 5 full minutes before the Pepsi incident. Showed his friends laughing, egging him on. Showed the manager turning away. Showed Angela's face in perfect clarity as the soda poured over her head. The shock, the humiliation, the way her hands trembled as she tried to wipe her eyes. And then it showed the aftermath. Showed her walking to the bathroom with her shoulders hunched and her head down. Showed her standing in front of the mirror crying silently. Showed her typing a text to someone, "Fine, home by midnight, love you," even though nothing was fine. The video ended. The silence in the warehouse was suffocating. "That woman," Lucky said quietly, his voice controlled but with an edge like a razor, "is my wife, the person I love most in this world. The person I promised to protect, to honor, to cherish. And your son," he looked at Darren with such cold contempt that Darren physically recoiled. He turned her into a joke for his drunk friend's entertainment. "Mr. Bonanno," Victor started. "I'm not finished." Lucky's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the space like a blade. "You want to know why I'm destroying you? It's not about money. It's not even about revenge. It's about making you understand that every person matters. That waitress you didn't defend? She's someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone who deserves basic human dignity, regardless of how much money you have." He leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. "Angela came home that night and lied to me. Told me everything was fine because she was afraid. Afraid that speaking up would cost her job. That complaining would make her look weak. That people like her don't get justice against people like you." Lucky's jaw tightened. She was protecting me from worrying. Even after being humiliated, she was thinking about someone else. That's who she is. Darren's face was pale, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was drunk and stupid and you thought she was nobody." Lucky's eyes locked onto Darren's. "That's the truth, isn't it? You saw a waitress, someone beneath you, and you thought there would be no consequences. Well, here are your consequences." He slid a document across the table. Victor picked it up with shaking hands. "You'll make a televised public apology. Tomorrow. To Angela specifically, and to service workers everywhere. You'll establish a $60 million fund for workplace dignity and harassment prevention. 20% of Kemp Enterprises will be transferred to a trust that supports workers' rights organizations. And Darren," Lucky's voice went flat, "you will never hold a public-facing position in any business again." $60 million, Victor's voice choked. "That will bankrupt us." "No, that will humble you. Bankruptcy comes if you refuse." Victor stared at the document. At the end of everything he'd built. At the price of his son's cruelty. "And if I sign this," Victor said slowly, "you'll stop? The projects will move forward?" "Sign it, mean it, and fulfill every word. Then yes, your company survives. Smaller, humbled, but alive." Lucky stood, buttoning his cuffs with precise movements. "You poured Pepsi on my wife for fun, so now you'll drown in what you built your own pride." He walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Victor? Angela still doesn't know I had anything to do with this. To her, I'm just her husband who loves her, and that's how it stays. Because unlike you, I don't need the world to know my power. I just need my wife to feel safe." The door closed behind him. Victor and Darren sat in the harsh light, staring at the papers that would dismantle their empire. And Victor picked up the pen. "Power doesn't need to shout. It just smiles while you beg." If that line made your pulse jump, subscribe because the world's about to see who truly runs New York. The next morning, the world stopped spinning for Angela. She sat on the worn velvet couch in their living room, a mug of lukewarm coffee resting in her lap, trying to process the chaos of the last few days. Lucky sat next to her, a copy of the Times spread across his knees, occasionally flipping a page with measured calmness. The television was on, tuned to a morning news program that she usually ignored. But today, the anchor was talking about her. The segment began with a montage, the viral video, the headlines about Kemp & Son's sudden financial troubles, and then a graphic of the newly established Workplace Dignity Fund with a staggering $60 million allocated to it. Angela felt her breath catch in her throat. She looked at Lucky, whose eyes remained fixed on his paper, his face a mask of domestic serenity. Then, the camera cut to a live feed. Victor Kemp, the formidable, silver-haired mogul, stood at a mahogany podium, flanked by his lawyer, Thomas Reed, and a pale, clearly miserable Darren. Victor looked defeated, his Tom Ford suit rumpled, his usual charisma replaced by a deep, palpable anxiety. "We are here today," Victor began, his voice surprisingly shaky, "to address an incident that has brought great shame upon the Kemp name and our company, Kemp & Son Developers." Angela reached out and instinctively clutched Lucky's arm. He set his newspaper down gently, finally turning to the screen. "This is crazy," Angela whispered. "Why is he doing this? They never apologize." Lucky watched the screen, his expression unreadable. "Maybe they finally realize their actions have consequences, Amor," he murmured, his gaze soft as he looked at her, his voice devoid of any triumph. Victor continued, his composure cracking when he reached the prepared statement. He cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. "My son, Darren Kemp, behaved with unforgivable cruelty toward an individual who was simply doing her job with dignity. We failed that individual. We failed in our humanity. And most importantly, we offer our deepest, most profound apology to Angela Herman." Hearing her name spoken on national television by the man whose company she believed was untouchable sent a fresh wave of shock through Angela. Victor's apology was precise, detailing the establishment of the massive fund and the implementation of strict new corporate policies on workplace conduct. Then, Darren was nudged forward. He looked less like a swaggering rich boy and more like a terrified child who had just realized the weight of his actions. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the podium. "I am so truly sorry," Darren mumbled, the words sounding hollow but undeniably forced. "To Angela Herman. I was drunk. I was arrogant. I believed I was above consequence. What I did was cruel, indefensible, and I am committed to making amends. I hope, one day, she can find a way to forgive me." The camera held on Darren's pathetic figure for a beat too long before the anchor cut in, summarizing the terms of the apology and the crippling financial penalties on Kemp & Son. Angela pressed the remote, turning the screen black. The sudden silence in the room was heavy, filled with the echo of Victor Kemp's defeated voice. She looked at Lucky, tears welling in her eyes, not tears of humiliation, but of bewildered vindication. "Lucky, I don't understand this," she choked out. "The Kemps don't do this. They don't apologize. They don't pay $60 million for a waitress. Someone made them do this." She searched his dark, intense eyes for an answer, for a flicker of recognition, but he remained perfectly composed, radiating only concern for her. He reached out and pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, his chin resting on her head. His embrace was warm, solid, and utterly protective. "It doesn't matter, Amore," he said, his voice a low, comforting rumble in her ear. "It only matters that the world saw them kneel." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his thumbs gently wiping the fresh tears from her cheeks. That video went everywhere. They were trending for all the wrong reasons. Their shareholders panicked. Their partners walked away. This is how the wealthy save face, Angela. They make a huge public spectacle to distract from the collapse. This isn't about you. It's about them trying to stop the bleeding. He was giving her a plausible, non-Mafia explanation, the ruthless logic of business, and she wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. The alternative was too dark, too impossible to reconcile with the gentle man who cooked her breakfast and watered her herb garden. She rested her head against his shoulder, her body shaking slightly. She felt safer than she had since the incident. The Pepsi stain on her soul was finally beginning to wash away. "They said my name," she whispered. "On TV. They were forced to say my name." Lucky stroked her hair, kissing her forehead, a gesture of a man who would gladly burn the world down to protect her peace. "And now," he said quietly, his eyes distant, fixed on a spot she couldn't see. "The world knows what happens when you disrespect a queen just because she's wearing an apron." He held her there for a long time, listening to her breathing even out, feeling the tension finally drain from her muscles. He knew the cost of this, the sheer manpower, the legal maneuvering, the decades of influence it had taken to dismantle a billion-dollar empire in 3 days. It was worth every single penny and every single risk. He would always be her safe harbor, the husband who just fixed cars and loved her unconditionally, a calm presence in a cruel world. The war was over, and his wife was finally starting to heal. The spectacular televised apology by the Kemps marked not an end, but a quiet, irreversible shift in the power structure of New York. Within weeks, the once mighty Kemp & Son developers faded into a cautionary tale. Their stock continued its downward spiral until it was delisted. The $60 million fund and the 20% equity transfer were simply too great a wound for the already exposed, brittle empire to bear. The projects Victor Kemp had once pointed to with pride, the Tribeca Towers, the Hudson Yards expansion, the meatpacking renovation, remained frozen for months. They didn't vanish in a blaze of glory or a hail of gunfire. They simply withered away, one canceled contract and one revoked permit at a time. Eventually, they were quietly absorbed by a maze of holding companies and subsidiaries, all of which ultimately reported back to El Banano Holdings. Lucky didn't want the notoriety of seizing a rival's empire. He wanted the profit and the permanent removal of a threat. Victor Kemp was now nothing more than a wealthy figurehead whose influence had been surgically neutered, allowed to keep his house but stripped of his legacy. And Darren? He disappeared entirely from the social scene. The humiliation of the apology, the sight of his father's empire dissolving because of his casual cruelty, was a punishment more profound than jail. He was alive, untouched by physical violence, but banned from ever holding a public-facing business position, a ghost living off a trust fund, forever branded as the brat who cost his family everything. He finally learned what it meant to be made small. Angela, meanwhile, was healing in the only way she knew how, by moving forward. She never returned to the Versailles Palace Hotel. The thought of that glittering ballroom and the feeling of the cold Pepsi made her physically ill. She found a new job at a small, independent restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the staff knew each other's names, and the owner saw her as a person, not a disposable shadow. The news cameras had long moved on, but Angela had become something unexpected. A quiet symbol. She was the waitress who made billionaires apologize. Her dignity, which Darren Kemp had tried to steal, had been repaid in full. She took the week off Lucky had urged her to, and then she went back to work, choosing to serve others not because she had to, but because she could, and no one would ever take her respect again. She often thought about the apology, the overwhelming public reaction. Lucky's calm, rational explanation about the stock market and PR moves made sense to her, fitting into the framework of the ruthless corporate world she knew. She was eternally grateful to the stranger, the anonymous Nico, the dishwasher, the person with the video who had been brave enough to upload the footage that triggered the cascade. She never questioned the coincidence of the Kemps' immediate financial ruin coinciding with her humiliation. Her heart simply wouldn't allow her to suspect the gentle, composed man who made her feel safe every single morning. One sunny Thursday morning, a few months after the reckoning, Lucky sat in his usual booth at Sal's Diner in Red Hook. He looked exactly as he always did: jeans, work boots, a newspaper, and a steaming espresso. To the world, he was just a local businessman, a loving husband. Rico Falcone slid into the seat opposite him, a faint, satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He looked relaxed, the tension of the last few months finally gone. The Tribeca land sale closed this morning, Rico reported quietly, opening no file this time. The final paperwork went through. Our shell company owns everything Kemp & Son built. Lucky nodded, taking a deliberate sip of his coffee. Good. We start construction on schedule. No delays. And we pay the union 25% more than market rate. We build a reputation for treating people right. Rico raised an eyebrow. So, we're done? The Bonanno organization is officially done with the Kemp family's mess? Lucky set his cup down, the clink soft but final. He looked toward the counter, where Angela was laughing with the young waitress who had fumbled their order months ago, the girl who reminded Lucky of Angela's own diligence. Angela, who had come by the diner on her way to work for a coffee and a quick kiss. We're never done, Lucky said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. But we're quiet again. He watched as a waiter walked past, carrying a tray with a fizzing glass of soda for a customer. The dark liquid caught the sunlight, the ice clinking softly. The sound reminded him of that first, devastating sound in the Versailles ballroom. She's happy, Rico observed, following his gaze. Lucky's eyes were fixed on the soda, the simple, common drink that had sparked a war. More than anything in this world, he said, his voice quiet, carrying the weight of absolute certainty. He glanced back at Rico, his dark eyes sharp and assessing, holding all the power he had carefully hidden away. And Rico? Lucky picked up his newspaper, masking his face once more. Tell me something. Even the sweetest drink can leave a bitter aftertaste. The Kemps will remember that taste forever. That's what matters. Lucky Banana went back to reading his newspaper, his morning ritual undisturbed. The king of New York's unseen infrastructure was simply enjoying his coffee. He had fought a quiet war and won a perfect victory, all for the woman who believed he was nothing more than her handsome, unassuming husband. And as long as Angela felt safe, felt loved, and felt dignity, Lucky Bonanno would remain the most dangerous man in the city, because his love, she would never know, was his only line and his greatest weapon. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.